at. The next row is a row of broccoli, cabbage, family things. So the first two, the two on the end, are cabbage. The next little group, it's going to be either be 2 or 3, are broccoli. And then also tucked away over here, oh, I think it's 2 broccoli, tucked away over in the corner up here, in either one corner or the other near these snow peas, these are collard greens. Again, collard greens, it's another type of green. Not everybody knows them. I love collard greens, especially towards fall. What I'll do is I'll plant these in the spring, and I will, I'll certainly have little harvests of the outer leaves again, but I'll let them grow, and I won't harvest them till the fall until they get their first frost, and then those leaves end up, they end up having these sugar content in them that really sweetens them up. I know a lot of people think of collards as a southern cooking green, but I love them as like a northern fall cooking green. They certainly, are a good summer cooking green up here as well. But I'd like you to see that your collard plants, if you allow them to grow, mature, get deep root systems, and that if you don't over harvest them, they'll last into the fall. Broccoli, you've got a few Waltham broccoli plants here. These are ones where they're really only to produce one head of broccoli, one floret of broccoli, and the spacing on all of these plants, the broccoli, the cabbage, the collard greens, these are all in this area because these are ones where you do want to space them out further. I think I put a little tag that said broccoli cabbage 18 inches plus. So you want to go 1.5 to 2 feet apart on these, really far apart. In order for broccoli to create that floret at the top, it really needs a lot of space. It's going to be a lot of leaves at first, lots of leaves on that broccoli plant, and then eventually, hey, really 2 months from now or so, it'll eventually have some florets. And the cabbage, you've got, I believe it's a Savoy cabbage that you have here. I may be wrong, not all of my labeling is correct. Again, this is one, it's going to be a long-term growth thing, space them apart. You can put them at the edge, either in the center or the edge of the garden, somewhere where you've got a good amount of room. Now, in one of the corners, you've got a little bunch of onions. This is a small little bunch, and these have been growing since February. It's the end of April, beginning of May right now, and so this has been like a long-term commitment. Now, as they are, you could take this little soil block and plop it in the garden. That's totally fine. Still recording? Okay, good. You could take it and plop it in the garden, and these will grow. They'll push each other apart, and you can harvest them as scallions, as green onions. However, go ahead. You can be violent with this. You can pull apart the potting soil, and you can pull each one of these out. You can pull each one of these, again, just kind of rough up the edge. You don't want to tear the roots. You just kind of want to have the soil fall apart from the roots. And yes, some of the roots are going to get damaged. And then what you can do is pull each one of these apart, and you can plant them in your garden bed. You could go, 3 inches, 4 inches apart in a line, and then you could have some onions later on in the summer. They'll bulb up. Now, onions, the onion family crops, well, a lot of crops need water. Onion crops especially need water. You really don't want them to dry out. Now, the last row of things that you have in here, I'm not going to pull them out, except maybe just to pull one out to show. These have like really extensive root systems. They're peas. You've got a mix of snow peas and sugar snap peas here. So the soil blocks for these are really wanting to fall apart. They're just, the seeds for these, they were just planted a couple weeks ago, and they are ready to go. So rather, instead of, some of these have been growing for a month, 2 months, these have been only growing for a couple weeks. They are ready to go in the garden. Really, you don't want the roots to dry out, but these are going to want to climb. A different habit than all of the others. If you have a fence line to put these up next to, or if you can put some sticks in the ground, these will climb 3, 4, 5 feet tall, depending, on how well they do in your garden. If you want, you can break this apart and plant each individual one, really a couple inches apart. That would be fine. Or you can leave it as just one block, put it in the soil. But if you were to do that, since you're since these three plants placed 2 inches apart, well, 2 or 3 inches apart would roughly take up a 6-inch space, and then another 6-inch space, another 6-inch space. If you were to plant them all as one multi-block, that's fine, but you'd want to make sure that you space out the next multi-block of these another 6 inches away, not an inch away. So you've got that option, tearing them apart, spacing them out, or hey, just do what I do. Just plop the whole block in the ground. Why bother disrupting the soil and the roots of that? Now you've got 3 different kinds. The first row is sugar snap peas. The second row is a dwarf, meaning dwarf, they grow shorter, dwarf snow pea. And then the back row is a cool purple potted pea. It's likely to have purple pods. It's a cool thing. I'll be honest, it's the first time I'm growing it this year. Now, I'm going to change. If you did not get the tomato or herb transplant subscription, you can stop right now. However, if you got the tomato subscription, I'm going to give you a couple tomatoes to start with right now. Now we still are in the time of frost, so maybe you want to take an old jug or something like that, cut the bottom off, put it on top of this to protect it, make like a little greenhouse. If you do that, you're going to want to make sure that the top of the jug, if there's a cap on it, the cap's popped off so that any hot air during the day it can vent out of it. You're getting these two tomatoes. This is an heirloom variety called Silver Fir Tree. It's known for having some of the earliest tomatoes in the garden. So hey, why not get them in the ground now? You can experiment with them, see how they do. So just a couple tomato plants, but those who subscribe to the heirloom tomatoes, you will get the majority of those down the road. This one, Silver Fir Tree, you can look at it like the leaf structure of this is going to be a lot different than any of the other tomatoes that you get. It's also a determinate tomato, which means that there's indeterminate and determinate tomatoes. The indeterminate tomatoes are ones that kind of fruit over a longer period of time, and it's kind of hit or miss when you end up getting them. But the determinate ones, bam! When they do fruit, you're going to get all your tomatoes within a shorter period of time, and they will then be done fruiting. So these, once you do see that, they're not really producing any fruit, any flowers, go ahead, rip them right out of the ground, put something else in the ground for fall. All right, so for those who got herbs, I'm going to give you a couple perennial herbs. A couple of the favorites that are doing well in the garden. These are not grown in soil blocks. These are literally just cut right out of my garden. So some of the roots are exposed and everything. I certainly want to keep these water. Get them in the ground as soon as possible. But we got chives. Some of these even have like some little flowers that are going to be popping up with the little purple flowers coming up. If you just like plant this in the ground, you could harvest a little from it this year, that's fine, but if you let it, leave it alone, it'll come back as a bigger plant next year, and then a bigger plant, and a bigger plant, and you can do what I do after a while. When it becomes a big plant, hey, shove a shovel right down the middle of it and turn it into 2, 3, or 4 plants. That's exactly what happened with this. This is a 1-year-old plant that was growing as with another one, and I just cut it in half, and you end up benefiting. You get half of this new plant now to add to your herb garden. And now another cool herb slash cooking green slash salad green sometimes is sorrel. This one, you'll see this one's got like these big thick taproots. This is a 1-year-old growth. I planted these last year and you get them now. Sorrel is at our school farm we call it lemon leaf. My grandmother used to make, my grandmother, great grandmother, both of them used to make a lemon sorrel soup by picking these leaves, adding it into the soup, and there's certainly recipes online. This is one where this is a perennial plant. Each of the 3 herbs that you're getting are perennials. They will come back year after year after year. So find a good home. Find a place that's not going to get disturbed and tilled up every year. Find a little corner of the garden where you can be like, you know what? All right, that's your home. That's your permanent home, or at least semi-permanent. You can always dig this up year after year and transplant it to a new spot. So sorrel is one that you'll get, and this, you're gonna get an onion. All right, and I'm kind of putting this underneath all the other herbs so it's like little roots don't dry out. Hey, if it dies, just ask me for another one. This is Egyptian onion. A friend of mine, June Pleakin, gave me some Egyptian onion bulbs, you know, one fall. And I've just been propagating from them ever since. They're called a walking onion. As this grows upright, at the end of the season, it grows little bulbs at the top of this, little onions at the top. And they're not really worth eating, but each of those onions next year, you could then take those little onion bulbs and plant them in the ground. Now you've got a new Egyptian onion plant. They're called a walking onion because at the end of the season, those heavy bulbs at the top would tip over and walk away from the plant. You know, there you go, walking onion. So really, how are these harvested? After they're established, this year I wouldn't eat it. Next year, after you've planted the little bulbs, this will grow up and you can cut it and have it as scallions, as a green onion that you can eat year after year after year after year. Through that bulb propagation, you can keep coming back. All right, well, that's it for the first transplant subscription. I hope you enjoyed this. Bring your questions. Feel free to ask your questions in person. Text me, message me, any old way. And I hope I've inspired you, and I hope you'll learn something through gardening at home this year. I hope at least something in this mix is something brand new to you. That is something that I was, you know, hoping and promising for you, even if it's like some of the white or red Russian kale if you've never grown that, or silver fir tree as a tomato. Hope that at least some of the varieties might be different. Maybe you have grown some of these before, but maybe the varieties are different. Thank you, and that's it.